All right, so welcome to the Corner Office podcast. My name is Charles Chang. I am here today with two amazing guests, Stephen Francis Pillai and Paul Rassi from FC Lawyers. It's a pleasure, gentlemen, to have you guys here. Thank you for coming.
Great being here, Charles.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, these guys are my go-to lawyers. So whenever I need anything, anything real estate related, wills, all that stuff, and even starting my prec, which maybe we can dive into, these guys were heavily involved with setting that up for me, and I send all my clients your way.
It's much appreciated.
Yeah. So maybe you guys can both start by giving us a little bit about what FC Lawyers is about, a bit about yourselves, how you got started, and what you love about what you do.
Yeah, for sure. So I started the practice back in 2006. It's been quite some time, straight out of school. Definitely had a love and a passion for real estate for quite some time. So it went really hand in hand with what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
It was sole practitioner right up until about a year and a half, 2 years ago, which is when Paul joined us. Paul articled with us through 2020, and then started up as a full-time lawyer in 2021. So he's been in practice for about a year and a half now.
Wow.
So a great amount of experience behind the firm. Very boutique style firm.
I've noticed that.
Yeah. So it definitely helps to make decisions in terms of how we want to structure our business and the firm, and what to prioritize, which is very important for us.
Yeah.
We've always wanted to keep the clients a priority and make changes along the way too, right?
Yeah. Is that a route that happens normally for people coming out of law school, just straight into their own practice, or is it common that people will start working elsewhere, or,
Yeah, it's great that you bring that up, because I remember, like it was yesterday, I remember the day that I decided to go out on my own, and I had a call from two somewhat big firms in Ottawa, and they called me in and they tried to basically say, look, you're not going to make it on your own in Ottawa. This is it's a cutthroat industry, and you should be joining a firm to start off, and then if you choose to go on your own after 5 to 10 years, you could do so. And I remember being super nervous about it. It was new, it was unknown territory, but sure enough, it worked out. It was a lot of work. The first 5 years were very challenging, very taxing. So no, it's definitely not the norm.
It's not, yeah.
Yeah. So typically you work for a big firm, you learn the ropes, and then if you choose to go out on your own, you do so. But
yeah, that's what I found too, starting in real estate. The first few years of my career was not the greatest, and it took a while to build up any type of clientele, and to get people to trust you as an individual is tough, right?
When you're new, especially, right? So everybody wants an experienced everything.
Me too, included, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
So that's awesome. So since 2006, were you always at that location, or where you are now?
So in 2006, the first office that I set up was a tiny little office on Laurier Street on the 20th floor of the Gillen building, right at Elgin and Laurier. I was there for 3 years, and after my third year, I decided to buy the building.
Okay, wow, nice.
Every month that I would go pay a rent check was painful.
Very. How much was rent back then?
The rent for that office was $1,500, if I remember correctly, and it went up every year incrementally.
That doesn't sound so bad right now.
Right now, it doesn't sound bad at all.
That's like, that's nothing.
Yeah. It was definitely quite a bit of money back then.
Yeah.
When you're first starting out, but by the third year, I said, you know what? No, can't do the rental payments anymore.
Yeah.
And downtown was still somewhat affordable, unlike today. So bought that building on Gladstone and Bank.
Nice.
Nice heritage building from a little old lady that raised her family in it.
Yeah.
And she had a little shoe repair store, and the rest is history.
Yeah, shout out to that subs place beside
Sabitos.
Yeah. Shout out to them. They're awesome.
Those boys are brilliant. Yeah.
Every time I go in there, their sandwiches are so big and filling, and they're awesome.
Sure.
Great service too. So
no, they're fantastic. Yeah. We definitely recommend it. Yeah.
All right, Paul. So let's hear your come up story.
Oof, my come up story. Where, well, I guess I'll start. I graduated law school 2019. Decided to take a year off, just kind of take a feel for things, take a break before I started my career. And coincidentally, it was doing that was being at the right place at the right time, because I was talking to a few family friends of mine, and they actually knew Stephen personally, and introduced me to Stephen, and so I met with him at the end of 2019. I'd say early 2020.
Yep.
Yeah, and then we hit it off, and I was looking for an articling position, and he's looking for an articling student. So I started with him in 2020.
So you've never practiced pre-COVID?
No.
So you don't know what it's like to. Are you meeting clients in person now?
Yeah, we're starting to. Yeah, once everything kind of leveled off a little bit with COVID, we're starting to see more clients in person, which is nice. It's a lot different, right? So like you were saying, I had no practice experience prior to COVID. So
yeah, you articled while being in lockdown.
Yeah.
Okay,
literally,
so it's so different.
Yeah, I think I was 2 weeks in March.
Yeah.
First, I started March 1st or whatever.
And then we went remote. Yeah.
And we went remote 2 weeks. So.
And how is that now? Are you guys all back in the office? All your staff is back in?
Our entire team's back in. Yep. We're full time in the office. It's business as usual.
Okay.
But everybody's gotten used to doing remote signings. Even our clients, for the most part, they all just.
I enjoyed it. Speaking from firsthand experience, I enjoyed it. There's less of that, like walk into a nice office,
for sure.
There's somebody greets you with a coffee or something like that. There's less of that, but it's faster. I don't have to leave my house.
Sure. Yeah. It's convenient too, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
We have the majority of our clients signing for their homes in pajamas and boxes, and and they don't
halfway
have to,
across the country sometimes.
Yeah.
So it's changed now officially. So I remember back in the day, it was clients had to come to Ottawa, like investor clients had to come and physically sign in person. So now that's no longer a thing.
Well, there's a bit of a caveat to that, I think that right now what's happening is there's some lenders that are requiring pen to paper. So they do want the firm to actually meet the client and sign them up, verify ID in person. Not very many of them, but we're starting to see some of them that are opening up back to it, wanting people to actually come in. But for the most part, I mean, we're still business as usual, virtual signings.
So, but from a law society aspect, it's fine.
It's fine. Yeah.
Okay, it's acceptable.
We go through very stringent requirements to verify ID, and there's a process for virtual signings with the Law Society that we have to follow. But other than that, it is business as usual virtually.
Oh, okay,
yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
So maybe we can get into, because our audience is obviously interested in business side and real estate in general. So we talk with my team a lot about the real estate side, like buying and selling, the actual searching of homes and whatnot. Maybe we can dive into a little bit of what the law firm's role is in a real estate transaction, and kind of describe what maybe an overview of the process for somebody who's new to all this, never bought a house before.
Yeah, for sure.
Maybe you can. Yeah.
So essentially, maybe what we'll do is, Paul, you can just chime in and explain the process as soon as we get an agreement of purchase and sale. So you folks, being the realtors, once you've gone through the offer process of back and forth and bidding wars and all that strong arm stuff, once you've got an accepted offer, that's where the firm steps in. That's where our role begins. So you'll send us the accepted offer. And from there, it comes into our inbox, and we take over. I'll let Paul advise on the process following that.
Yeah, because I deal a lot with you, Paul. So
yeah, for sure. So once we get the agreement, we basically start processing the file. So we reach out to the client. We start getting some information from them. So it's very general information, personal information from them, their IDs, things like that, and then. From that point, basically our role is, I would put our role into two main parts. First part being title search.
Which I wanted to get into next.
Yeah, we'll definitely get into that.
Yeah,
we'll get into that.
The fun part.
Yeah, so that's kind of our first step, is we'll initiate that, begin the title search, make sure everything's all clear with that. Obviously, we're going to get into that in a little bit more detail, but so that we facilitate that, make sure everything's all clear for the client. And then we also basically assist them with the financing process. So if
You're
it's
dealing a lot with the lenders.
yeah, yeah. So we direct line with the lenders and make sure their conditions are satisfied, so that we can receive the funds from them and then close on the purchase. Yeah. So basically, and then at the end we facilitate the registration too. So
Okay. So on my clients' closings, sometimes I feel like it's a crapshoot. Like, are we going to close today or is it going to be delayed? So is there ways to like, is it a crapshoot on your end too? Or is there ways to make sure that we can close that day? Because I say like 60% will close on that day. Sometimes it just doesn't, and we need an extension.
I think that, and this sounds so cliche because I think that everybody blames everything on COVID personally, but I am gonna jump in and say that it has been challenging with everything that's gone on in the last 2 years. We have seen delays in closing a little bit more than usual. Banks are a little bit slower. So the good thing that came out of all of what's happened in the last 2 years is that lawyers can actually do the banking via wires.
Yeah.
Whereas before we're sending clerks and runners to go do banking physically, and very time consuming. But with wires, it's a lot more simple for us. But having said that, if it's a Friday at the end of the month and there is an exorbitant amount of wires going through, we're seeing delays with banks with these wires. And if the funds don't get to the seller's lawyer, for instance, by 5 p.m. or before, we're not closing that day, right? So we are seeing delays more than before pre-COVID, but more so. I mean, we being the law firm, we've implemented quite a few things that facilitate the closing happening on time. So we make sure that we reach out to clients, make sure that their mortgage lenders have sent us the required documents, a week, 2 weeks before in advance, so we have everything, not leave it till the last minute, which is very important. We're a lot more proactive to make sure that everything's lined up, even items that are not within the scope of our tasks. We actually reach out as a courtesy to the client and say, look, just wondering if you've had this lined up. In the event that you haven't, probably a good idea to get it set up so that it doesn't delay closing, right?
Yeah.
So I think that doing that and being cognizant of the fact that clients don't do this every day.
Yeah.
For the most part, it's 5-10 years at a time that they'll be buying a house or upgrading or downsizing. So we keep that in mind, and I think that's very crucial for us to keep in mind that we may be doing this every day, but the client not doing it every day. We need to reach out to them and make sure that we guide them through the process.
Yeah.
That helps closing on time.
Yeah, at the end of the day, I think both of our roles is very customer. It's fully customer service,
Complete
based,
client
right?
service, absolutely.
100%.
Yep.
And however, like I have the same philosophy. However, whatever I can do to make this transaction actually happen, I will do.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if it's like you said out of my scope. When I follow up with you guys, follow up with the lenders myself.
Yep.
So that's all part of it, making sure we actually can move forward that day. So.
And that's a great thing that you bring up, Relay. It's all the industries coming together for the client to make sure that everything gets done. It's not just pointing the finger and saying, "Well, that's not my job," right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's great when everybody comes together and just has the same intentions in mind, and that's why Paul and I focus on dealing with like-minded people in the industry.
Absolutely.
So people like yourself that actually care about ensuring that the client's taken care of helps us do our job better because we're all on the same page.
Yeah.
We just want the client to be happy. We like to make sure that it's a great experience for them. Yeah. Buying a home is a fantastic experience for the most part. Making sure that they enjoy it and not just be stressed out.
Yeah.
Because it can be very stressful if they're not advised of certain things, right?
Yeah.
And left to the last minute.
I've got some horror stories myself. So maybe we can dabble into title search, because that's something of a little bit of a mystery to me. Like when clients ask me about what that is, I have a little bit of knowledge about it, but I don't have an in-depth answer. And I think I'll clip whatever you guys say, and when somebody asks me, I'll say just refer to this podcast. What is the title search? Why do we need it? And like what goes on?
Yeah, so maybe I'll start, and Paul, you can take over. I'm doing all the talking here, so I'll try to revert
You're
back.
doing great. You're doing great.
Yeah. So title search, a big part of the role that we play as lawyers in the purchase of a property is the title search. So we're responsible to verify the title of said property and make sure that everything has been done up until the date of closing, but more so going back as far as we can. There are some firms out there that just do a surface level title search, which essentially pulls an abstract of the property that just outlines every transaction that's taken place, but doesn't get into the detail of every transaction.
Okay.
So at our firm, we've basically made it a policy that we do not do a surface level search by just pulling an abstract, a pin. We actually do in-depth title searches by pulling every document and making sure that every transaction that's taken place in the past on title to that property has been done correctly.
Okay.
Cost a bit more, but we're definitely not in the business of being the cheapest law firm out there. But we just want it done right. We want it done the first time, right?
Yeah.
So essentially, we go back as far as we can, pull the instruments that are on title, verify that everything's been done correctly, and if there's any issues, we basically have to do. It is time sensitive, and in that, in the agreement of purchase and sale that you guys draft, you put a title search date. That's the deadline that we have to complete our title search and report back to the seller's lawyer with any deficiencies that need to be remedied prior to closing.
So my rule of thumb is we'll do like 2 weeks before closing. Is there really? You said it's time sensitive, but is there really a need to have it at 2 weeks, or could it be 5 days before closing? Could it be 60 days before closing? And what's the risk between changing the date or not? Sometimes we amend the closing date, but we don't change the title search, forget or whatever. What's the ramifications?
So we like 2 weeks, mainly because it's enough time before closing for nothing to happen on title that's new, but then it's enough time for the seller's lawyer to remedy any kind of deficiencies if there are some, right?
Okay.
So let's say you set the title search date for a couple of days before closing. If we come across an issue on title and we send that deficiency to the seller's lawyer 2 days before closing, chances are this property's not closing on time, right?
So like Paul, like what do you see is like, I think you do a lot of title search. Like what is the most common deficiency that you come across?
See, most common. Yeah, mostly we see old mortgages or old mortgages registered on title. Maybe they haven't been deleted yet. We need to make sure that gets removed.
Okay.
Things like easements as well. That could be a main thing where maybe there's an easement on the back 4 feet of the property.
Yeah.
And we do a review, like a basic Google satellite search, and see that there's a shed there encroaching on that easement.
Okay.
So that's a violation too that needs to be corrected. So whether they move the shed off that easement, because if that let's say the easement is in favor of Bell, for example.
Yeah.
If Bell needs to access that portion of the property to do a repair, they will need to. They have the right to request that shed gets removed.
So in a like to role play, if a buyer says, "Well, now the shed's there, and I don't want this property anymore," then it gets dicey, right? The deposits and there's all these things that are involved, and I find that every time I've gotten into a situation like that, and most of the time the buyer just ends up just accepting the way it is because it's such a fast market. Like how can we do a title search before we place an offer, right? and see where the easements are. Like it's
No, I don't think that this falls on the realtors to do. When you folks look at the legal description, you'll know that there's an easement on it. But having said that, the one advice that we can actually give to realtors, which I thought about this morning, because we actually had an exact scenario this morning in one of our title searches with a shed that was encroaching. What we suggest to realtors is if there is a shed on the property, include it in the chattels, right?
Yes.
Include it in the chattels. A lot of realtors don't do that. But if your client expects that shed's coming with the property, I would include it in the agreement of purchase and sale, because that facilitates us as lawyers, when we see the shed is encroaching, we can go back to them before the title search date and say, look, that shed's in the wrong place. It's encroaching over an easement. You need to move it before closing. We've had cases where we've gone to the seller's lawyer and they said, well, look, the shed's not included. It's not in the agreement.
So they would actually remove it?
They would actually either remove it or say your client can keep the shed, but in turn, we're not moving it because it wasn't included in the agreement of purchase and sale.
So even though it's not included, but you're leaving it, that
alleviates their requirement.
Their responsibility.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
So I do put all sheds and even anything like deck box, anything.
Everything. Yeah. So that's brilliant. As long as you include it, then, we can say, look, it's part of the contract, but it's encroaching on an easement. You need to remedy that before closing, right?
Yeah.
And we always negotiate with the seller's lawyer. Look, we're very cognizant of the fact that some things might not be possible before closing, right?
Yeah.
The closing's in 2 days. You can't have someone, and it's in the middle of winter. There's 30 centimeters of snow outside.
Yeah.
Can't expect them to move it. So we work with the seller's lawyer and our clients for the best possible solution. Maybe a price abatement.
Yeah.
Get an estimate as to how much it'll cost to move in the spring, and just do a credit on closing and whatnot. But just our clients knowing that problem does exist. We do satellite views of every property to see what's in the backyard. Just go a little bit further to make sure that our client knows what they're getting.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool. And then the next thing is, I get this all the time. This happens probably 80% of my transactions. Buyer walks in, the dishwasher is not functioning properly. This button is not working properly. Well, it's a little bit, the toilet is draining slower. Yeah. So what can we do? Or I guess this is a question for some advice. What can we do to help the buyers in a situation like this? Because there's been so many situations where I end up, just as a courtesy, helping my clients out, and just, we'll get it fixed for you, no problem. Or fortunately that's that, right? So what can we do as realtors to protect our buyers in situations like that? Because we got a final walkthrough, but we're not there for 10 hours. We're there for 30 minutes to an hour.
It's just a quick walkthrough to make sure everything's in place, right?
Yeah. It's a tough one for sure. I guess our advice, I don't know if you want to chime in as well, Stephen, is to document as much as you can. So like
go into the showing, the first showing, take some pictures or
pictures, videos. If the dishwashers weren't working perfectly fine when the offer is being made, and all of a sudden, even on your final walkthrough as well, or not the final walkthrough, but I would say after your first showing, everything looks fine, and then all of a sudden on closing, nothing works anymore.
Yeah.
Then at that point you have it documented, right? That it was working on closing, and then if you had that in your Schedule A, that the seller warranted that everything was to be in working order, you'd have a good case to seek that compensation from the seller.
But is there some general concept of normal wear and tear, right? Like, let's say the floors are like this right now, and the closing's in 90 days, and you have a dog or you have kids or whatever, and the floors are getting scratched up. So what about that? Is there for the sellers then, right? Because then a buyer could film the entire floor and say, well, now there's this ding there, this ding there. Is there some level of kind of acceptance,
like a model that we can go by?
Yeah.
So I think it. Paul made a good point. The challenge that we're having right now is the market the way it is. It's each one for themselves. Everybody's just happy if they get the house, if they win the offer, right?
Yeah.
So, we're not having inspection conditions. Everybody's, bidding in, over asking. unconditional offers. You're accepting the house the way it is. Right?
Yeah.
So all the more reason your first walkthrough, before you offer in, whether it's one walkthrough, two walkthroughs, however many you're doing, use that iPhone. Snap as many pictures as you can, right?
Okay.
Take pictures of everything, every angle, the appliances. Like we've had sellers swap out the appliances.
Oh yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Yep.
So document everything. Our only proof is what you bring to the table when the client walked through, right? So I would take pictures of everything. We always advise our clients with regards to the chattels. So you guys are great. Realtors put in that condition that all chattels are to be working on closing, and that survives after the closing if they find out that it doesn't.
Yeah.
Just make sure that all the chattels are listed in the agreement. For the clients themselves, we advise every one of our clients that when they do their final walkthrough the day before, the best time to do your final walkthrough is the day before or the morning of the closing, because that's the last opportunity you have after the sellers have moved out, right?
Okay.
So quick walkthrough, see if everything's there, open the fridge, see if it's plugged in, it's working, the freezer, the stove, washer, dryer, you obviously can't. The dryer, you can start it up, see if it heats. The washer, you can't run a load. Dishwasher, you can't run a load. So what we typically tell them is, if everything's working at the walkthrough, when we give them their keys, we tell them, look, either tonight, the day of closing, or the next morning, spend a couple of hours at the house and run everything. Make sure that everything functions. If you find that something does not work, come back to us with it, with an estimate from, let's say, a specialist as to what the cost would be to repair it.
Yeah.
We go back to the seller's lawyer with that estimate, and we basically ask them to make it right.
But what about timing? Because let's say there are deficiencies and we want to remedy that. If it's the day of the closing, is there realistically amount of time that we can come to an agreement for a price change or swap this out?
Yeah, great question. So the reason why we try to get our clients to do it through the walkthrough before the actual transaction closes is, we all know you have more leverage when the transaction hasn't closed. You give someone the money for something, good luck getting anything out of them after is the challenge, right? So we say, do the walkthrough before. If you find something, we can negotiate. The lawyers can negotiate either a holdback or a credit on closing to say, look, it wasn't working, so we're going to hold back $1,000.
Do you agree to that?
Exactly.
That's what I say. Okay.
Exactly. Yeah, absolutely. Right. So that gives the opportunity for the seller to say, you know what, I'm going to fix it for you, but here's a holdback in the lawyer's trust account. Once it's fixed, you release it back to me, or let's just settle this now and we'll just give you $1,000 rebate off the price.
But what I meant is, if we do the final walkthrough the day before closing, the day of closing, and then this is not working and we want you to replace it or fix it, there's not enough time for it to be fixed. So does that leave it always to that money option then?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay, it's most of that.
Oh,
time.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And I think that's preferable because it's so
I think
hard
it's
to
preferable
define.
too.
It's so hard to define what the
the
scope of
problem
what you're
is.
doing is, and is that actually gonna work?
Agreed. No, 100%. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Yeah, because they come up with that a lot. Yeah. Okay. So I come up with that a lot, and people ask me that all the time. I don't have the best answer for them. Like I just a lot of times just end up fixing for them. So
Yeah.
It's definitely a gray area.
We're seeing that a lot more too, mainly because it's a seller's market, right?
Yeah.
So sellers think that they don't have to do anything because the buyer's got their house. So
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so why don't we take like a 2-second break,
For sure,
a little
yeah.
breather, and then we can hop back in and talk some more.
Brilliant.
All right.
Perfect.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Okay, and we're back from that short break. You guys feeling good?
Feeling great. Thanks.
Awesome. Awesome. The next thing I wanted to talk to you and ask you guys about was lawyer fees. So people always ask me, do you know a lawyer? What do they charge? My lawyer charges this. And the prices are all over the place. And I think maybe lawyers, this is my perception, I don't know if it's true or not, but lawyers include certain things in their fees when they kind of tell you what their fee is, right? Some people will just say the actual legal fee, and then some people will include all the disbursements and whatnot. And maybe you can elaborate as to what the fee, what your fee, break down the fee basically, because it's all over the place. And then I think people get roped into just going with somebody who just describes himself as $700 legal fee, and then people all automatically assume it's cheaper and better. So
Yeah, I mean, in a real estate transaction, it can be very confusing and misleading. So how we structure it anytime we have a new client is we basically advise them right off the cusp that this is how we function. Full disclosure, purchasing a home super expensive. Clients want to know every expense, and they're entitled to it, right? So how it's structured is that there's two components to the legal fees in a closing. The first one is the actual fee. Okay. So what is the legal fee? That's the fee that the lawyer is going to charge that goes to the lawyer, to the firm, for the service they're providing. So that's the legal fee. The disbursements is the second component. The disbursements basically are what the law firm pays on behalf of the client for various different expenses in order to close a transaction. Registration costs, title insurance, the cost of a title search. There are numerous disbursements depending on the type of property, the type of transaction, right down to the lender. Some lenders require certain items that have to be done by the lawyer that will be a cost that the client will have to pay, that the lawyer will have to incur on behalf of the client. So in terms of what the client can know for certain is the legal fee. That's a fixed fee, right? So we normally give our quote to the client saying, this is our legal fee. And then the disbursements, because they vary, what we do is at the very least, we provide every one of our clients with a range. Okay. So we give them a range, a span that's, a $500 difference. Okay. That could be between, let's say, for instance, $1,000 and $1,500 is your range. And here's what depends on.
Here's why it can vary.
Exactly. And we give them an outline as to why it could vary and what changes.
So if there's some things that are pretty, like you were pretty certain that they're going to be there, like is title search mostly the same price?
Changes with every property.
Every property.
Yeah. So title search changes with every property. Title insurance changes with every property. Yeah. So a title insurance policy, for a home, let's say a condo that's $500,000 could be a $200 title insurance policy that the insurance company puts out. Then you could have someone buying a $1.5 million home, right? You submit it to the title insurer and they come back with a premium of $1,000. So right there, your variance in terms of a price for disbursements is tremendous. Yeah. Right? So
I've had people come back or ask me like, oh, why was it so much? It's like you said, like it varies depending on the property.
Yeah, for sure. So what we try to do is just so clients can budget, right? Like I said, it's expensive and every penny counts at that stage. So when they actually come to us before we're retained, we give them a quote and a range as a worst case scenario so that they know what to expect. Yeah. And then in our meeting, when we sign them up, when it's just before closing, we go through every line of the fund summary that outlines every expense that was incurred on their behalf.
Yeah, definitely, because the statement of adjustments, it's not super easy to understand all the time, and especially if this is your first time. And a lot of the people that are listening first time, they no concept of pricing and what these charges are, so it can be overwhelming. So
for sure.
I'm glad to hear you guys go over those line by line in a closing signing meeting, right?
Oh, so absolutely. That's the first thing we go over in a signing meeting. Yeah.
Yeah, it always comes together, I find, whenever we walk through through that statement of adjustments, then our fund summary, all of a sudden it's just pure clarity for the client, right? Because they see these numbers everywhere and they don't know what they mean, right? But then you walk through it, take it step by step, and all of a sudden it's just
yeah. I forgot to ask you guys, actually, with bridge loans, does that usually affect like closings for you? Like does that lead to more complications in terms of closing on time?
In terms of closing on time, not really. As long as because usually we're ahead of that, and the clients will let us know that the bridge loan is coming. Okay. So that we can prepare the documents ahead of time and be ready for it. Okay. No, but yeah, seems okay. Doesn't really affect it too much. I don't know if you want to chime in, Steven.
Yeah, I think as long as we receive the documents from the lender on time, I mean, if if we've prepared all the documents as if it's just one mortgage,
Yeah.
and then the day before the closing, the client comes to us and says, "Oh, by the way, there's a bridge loan." Absolutely, it'll delay closing, right?
Okay.
But as long as everything's been planned with regards to the bridge loan ahead of time, it's all about when the bank sends us the documents. So we definitely don't sit around and wait for the documents and then reach out to the client the day before the closing. We actually chime in with the client at least 2 weeks before closing, and we have emails that go out to the client 2 weeks before saying, hope you're doing well. Just to let you know, we haven't heard from your bank yet. We're closing in 2 weeks. Probably a good idea to get on the phone and get them to send us the documents.
Yeah.
Always prevents delays in closing.
Yeah.
And also relieves the anxiety for clients of going up to them 2 days before closing when they're packing their bags and moving trucks and whatnot, right? So
Yeah. Cool. Thank you so much, guys.
Yeah.
I know you guys offer wills and power of attorneys as well. So maybe Paul, why the hell does somebody need one of these things? A lot of younger listeners, and including myself, I'm probably got my first will like 5 years ago, and I'm pretty sure I should have needed one a long time ago.
Yeah.
Why do we need one?
When I think of a will, I think of having control over your assets, having control of where it goes, who it goes to, how much goes to each person. That's the way I look at it. Is you're at peace with yourself knowing that, hey, if I had a certain gift that I wanted to give to a certain individual, you write that in a will. You want to make sure that your family members are taken care of accordingly. Makes it a little easier for them to process your assets, your estate after you pass away when you do have a will, as opposed to not having a will.
Yeah.
So that's the way I look at it. Whereas you have that control, you have that peace of mind.
And it does get down to every single detail, or is there kind of a blanket of like this table, this microphone? Like, is it?
You could if you wanted to. It's entirely up to you. You can do a super blanket where all my assets go into what's called a residue,
Okay.
which is your combined value of your estate, and then they can be dispersed how you want it. Or you can do specific gifts where, like I mentioned, if you really like this table, you know that your cousin really loves this table. He really wants it if you passed away. So you can say, hey, my cousin, specify his name, everything like that. This table goes to him.
So when would you recommend somebody get a will? Like, how old would you be? Would you really need assets to have a will? If you're 18 years old, do you need one?
I recommend the minute that you turn 18, everybody should have a will. Nobody plans on passing away.
Absolutely
right.
not. Yeah.
I mean, we're seeing things happen on a daily basis that nobody predicts. Anyone that is 18 or over, get a will. It's not just for assets. It's just for making the final arrangements and settling everything off when you do pass away. Makes it that much easier for the people you're leaving behind. Hard enough that you're gone.
Yeah.
You do not want to leave something so burdensome for the people that you're leaving behind.
So can you give me an example of like somebody who just didn't have a will, and then like what are the ramifications? We want to put a little bit of fear into people to say like, hey, if you don't have your will, this can happen to you.
Yeah, so I can speak to it personally. Being a lawyer, having a law firm that does wills, I had a family member pass away a few months ago, and we didn't have a will. We just didn't have a will, and we're still dealing with it. Whether or not you have assets, it's right down to bank accounts. They will not give you access to do anything without going through courts, assigning people, the court determining who's the right person to deal with it, because that person didn't leave any instructions and didn't leave their intentions in a will, right?
It can't just be assumed.
There's no assumptions.
Exactly.
There's no assumptions. I mean, it's easier if the person's married and has a spouse. Typically, you can have a court acknowledge that and have direction. But if there's no direction, if there's no will, power of attorney. So our will packages come with power of attorneys.
Yeah,
which very important. 2 types of power of attorneys. One for personal care, which gives a certain person the right to make decisions on your behalf when you can't.
Yeah,
on a health basis. And the other one for property. So they have a right to do whatever they have to do on your behalf for their property.
Yeah, I think mine goes to my wife.
Yeah. So, so when when would you recommend somebody get a will? Like, how old would you be? Would you really need assets to have a will?
Yeah.
Or
Yeah, I think mine goes to my wife.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's typical. Yeah,
Okay, cool.
that's-
So they're very important, and it's just every adult needs one, and it just
Absolutely.
makes everybody. So I'm just trying to recap what you said. It makes everybody around you who's unfortunately have they lost you, but when they're dealing with settling your estate or handling your estate, it makes it a lot easier. They don't the process like how dramatic is the process shortened if you have a will versus if you don't have a will.
Immensely. I can't even begin to tell you.
Like it can take
Yeah.
years.
Yeah. So what I typically tell my clients to, as you mentioned before, instill fear in the nicest way, is if you don't want to do it for yourself, take the time to do it for the people you're leaving behind. If you can just picture yourself after you've passed on, looking down on the people that are grieving. But can't grieve because they're so busy dealing with stuff that loose ends that they have to close because you didn't do what you had to do before when you were still here, right?
I feel like that's super stressful, and I've dealt with unfortunately some estate sales.
Yeah.
So and and I've dealt with people that are the whole process is dragged on and on and on, and the grieving process is so much longer, and you don't have closure.
Time to grieve.
Yeah. It's just more stress than grieving. Yeah.
Agreed. And you also, I mean, the people that are left behind also would have loved to have known what your intentions were,
Yeah.
not guess.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Cool. So what the last couple things I wanted to touch on was what sets FC lawyers apart, because you guys have come on here and you've really talked awesome about what you guys offer. Just maybe wanted to see if you had anything to add about what sets you apart from any other law firm in the city or in the country.
Paul?
I think our client focused mentality, honestly, treating every file like gold. Just being there for the clients, having that direct line with them. I think that's what sets us apart, honestly, and that our quickness in our responses, efficiency, or quality of our service. I think that's
Well said. Yeah.
I was gonna say, like, I find that too, and this is why I gravitated towards working with you a lot, was because responsiveness, and not to discredit anybody else, but it takes a long time. Maybe it's notorious for lawyers to respond, and they don't respond much to you. Right? So having you guys here, and I'm able to get a hold of you and my clients that I send your way, get that same sentiment and feeling. That's kind of what I and my model my business over to, right? Like I don't take anything for granted. Anybody that comes to me that wants to buy or sell, even rent, it doesn't matter. I treat it like gold, like you said.
absolutely. Yeah.
I'll just add to that, Charles. Everyone that we add to our team, very, very carefully selected to make sure that they're on point with our values.
Yeah.
And our values are, every client matters. Every client has concerns. And like I said earlier, they're not doing this every day.
Yeah.
So every one of our team members knows that, every client's concern is our concern. We're readily available. Our clients all have Paul and I's cell phone numbers. And ironically, everybody says, well, you give your clients your cell phone number. What if they call you on a Sunday night at midnight? You know what? Surprisingly enough, every one of our clients have our cell phone numbers, and they don't.
Yeah.
They actually call us only when they need it. And if it's a 3-minute phone call that puts their mind at ease, they sleep better at night. And that call was really nothing off our backs, right?
Yeah,
So-
I feel the same way. There's some agents out there that, I mean, maybe they're super busy, but they don't have that mentality that I have, and maybe it works for them. But I've always been like, I come from nothing. I can't let anything slip by me.
Absolutely. Agreed.
So yeah,
No.
it's amazing.
Yeah.
Did you guys have anything else to add before we wrap up?
No, I guess we just wanted to really thank you for your support and your trust with your clients. I mean, like I said earlier, and Paul mirrored this, is that we really strive to work with people that are like-minded. It makes life easier, makes clients that much more happier, and we really appreciate the fact that you trust us with your clients, and we'll offer the continued red carpet service that we already do.
Awesome. Yeah. And thank you for coming on the podcast. Like, I think you guys dropped a lot of wealth and knowledge for anybody who's listening and watching. So yeah, thanks
Yeah,
again.
appreciate it. No,
All right.
thanks for having us.
All right, thanks guys.
Cheers.
That's a wrap.
Bye.